it. Luckily, halfway through the summer, college friends. She invited me to join a beach ball club. I had to ask for permission from my father, of course, and I can't express how happy I was when he gave me the permission. At least I could get away from my stepsisters, who were driving me crazy, slowly but surely. I gave it a lot of thought and came to the conclusion that it was the best to stay away from Alexis. It was doing none of us any good and only ruining more relationships. The best solution for me was to find some other girl who I could date and who was not my family. When I went to the beach ball club on the first day, I realized that I was the only guy there. It sure was awkward at first, but the girls of the club were really easygoing and nice, and they made me feel comfortable in no time at all. I liked this change of atmosphere because I was getting sick of being stuck at home with my ex and my crush, and them picking a fight every chance they got. I was getting along really well with some of the girls from the club, and I even thought that maybe I could finally find a girlfriend and get rid of Alexis.
Keep your game tutorial on with your screen off. Try YouTube Premium on us and walk through uninterrupted.
Alexis and Yuri. But guess who was there to ruin my plans? My stepsisters, of course. Everything was going well for the first few days, but one day they got suspicious of where I was going every day. I hadn't told them anything, even when Alexis asked me. I said that I was just meeting a friend, but I had no idea that they would go as far to follow me to find out. I was a fool to think that they would mind their own business. They followed my car when I left for the beach one morning. And the funny thing was that they crashed the game that I was enjoying with the girls and said that they had no idea that I was here. I heard about this beach ball club from one of my friends, so I decided to check it out, Yuri said innocently. I was bored at home, so I decided to tag along with Yuri. Alexis shrugged. I knew better than to believe them, but I didn't say anything because I didn't want to start a fight in front of other people. Still, this angered me to no extent. They had taken it too far now. Following and stalking me? They sure were something. Alexis and Yuri wanted to join the game too. Everyone agreed. We were playing in teams, and I made sure to pick the team that was playing against the one Alexis and Yuri were on. Now I had no idea that they would literally take it as a challenge. During the whole time, they kept on breaking rules, used unfair means, and even hit my team members with the ball. Their excuse for everything was, accident, or we are new to the game. Blah, blah, blah. I was seriously exhausted and irritated by the time the game was over. I went to a corner and plopped down on the sand. One of my friends from the club, Natasha, came to me with a bottle of water. You seem really tired, she remarked, sitting down beside me and handing me the bottle. I sighed. Yeah, I'm really sorry about my stepsister's behavior today. Yeah. They seemed a bit too... Natasha trailed off nervously. I don't know what to say. Are they normally like this, or did you all have a fight over something? I scoffed. This is their normal behavior. And sure, both of them fight all the time. Over me? Natasha gasped. What? Are you sure they are your stepsisters? I nodded. Yeah, this whole sibling thing complicated the matters in the first place. Uh-oh. I hope things work out for you, Theo, she said. I glanced up to look at her. She was one of the very few people who I liked a lot. She was very understanding and caring. In fact, I wanted to take things forward with her.
Let's head to bed, I guess. Let's head to the room, head to bed, wake up, and come back to the oval, I guess. It's 7 AM, cunt. Another day in this facility. Let's chill here. Press
I
play.
was not sure if it was a good idea now that Yuri and Alexis were here. Oh, by the way, Natasha continued, are you free tomorrow? I wanted to hang out with you, she said with a smile. So Natasha felt the same way about me. Well, I didn't see any harm in hanging out with her. So I was about to say yes when a shadow fell over us. I looked up to see Yuri, standing there with a scary look on her face. What the heck? How did she? Theo had plans with me tomorrow, Yuri said in a calm voice. So, unfortunately, he can't join you. Not tomorrow. Not ever. Actually, Alexis's voice cut in. I remember really well that Theo had plans with me. Why the heck do you interrupt me and Theo all the time? Yuri seethed, turning to face Alexis. Because you need to get it in your head that you are not dating Theo anymore, Alexis snapped. Why do you keep chasing him? He clearly has no feelings for you. Did I not make it clear to you that he likes me? Oh, really? Yuri crosses her arms. Let's ask Theo who he really likes. Both of them turned to me, and I clutched my head, letting out a frustrated scream. I'm freaking done with both of you! I stood up. Don't you dare try to talk to me again! I walked away from them, hoping they would listen to me at least this once. Enough was enough. They had taken things too far now, and they needed to learn about personal space and respecting other people's boundaries. I went home and locked myself in my room and switched off my phone. There were loud knocks on my door occasionally, but I didn't even bother to get up and see who it was. I was not in the mood to talk to anyone. Around 10 p.m., there was another knock. Someone slipped a note under the door. Out of curiosity, I went to pick it up. It was from Alexis, and it said, I am really sorry, Theo. I don't want anything else from you. Just come out and eat something. My heart melted a bit at this. At least she cared that much about me and was not selfish at such a time. I opened the door to find Alexis standing there with her head hanging low. I winced when I saw that she was crying. Carried when she was still there to ruin everything. One day I was with Alexis in my bedroom. We were watching movies and having fun in general. One thing led to another, and before I knew, we were making out. Now, it was a perfectly normal thing to do, right? Apparently for Yuri, it was not. I had no idea that she was freaking spying on us, standing outside my door. And when she saw us kissing,
It's what her doing
she let
too.
out a loud banshee-like scream.
Simple
Alexis
enough.
and I jumped away in shock. My heart was beating loudly. What the heck are you two doing? Yuri shrieked, barging inside my room. Yuri, were you watching us? Alexis asked. Of course, I couldn't trust you two together. Yuri simply replied as if it was no big deal. Are you two out of your mind? I yelled. It's freaking wrong. Who gave you the right to do that? Didn't I tell you to stay away from me? Get out! Right now! Yuri just glared at me. This is not over, Theo. And then she turned around and left. I glanced at Alexis. I think we should stop this. Whatever this is, right now. What? Why? Alexis asked in surprise. Well, what if Yuri tells everything to our... Read to her, I asked in exasperation. Don't worry, I have a plan for us, she replied. We are moving... Hi, my name is Cameron, and I'm 25 years old. I'm going to tell you my story about how I went from an orphan to being adopted by a big family, and finally becoming a stepdad, and a lot of other things. It's kind of crazy, honestly, how I'm even at high school at this age. But let me make everything clear for you first. So, basically, my mom and dad died in a car accident when I was around 3 years old. I don't even have many memories of them, except for the fact that we were a pretty isolated family. This brings me to my next point. Apparently, there weren't any relatives that my mom or dad kept in touch with. When the authorities tracked down a few of my distant relatives, they refused to look after me, because no one wanted a 3-year-old child to increase their burden. And my parents had left no will, so I was sent to an orphanage because there was no other option for me. Growing up in the orphanage was a pretty rough experience. Actually, who am I kidding? It was more than pretty rough. It was the worst thing ever. I was looked down upon by the other kids because, according to them, I was a strange guy. Just because I refused to do as they wanted. Refused to be a pushover. They took it upon themselves to make my life a living nightmare. Our caretaker was indifferent. He didn't even bother with what was going on. His negligent attitude gave the kids a free rein to do whatever they wanted. A sort of hierarchy was established in the orphanage. The older and the stronger kids had united against the weaker, younger ones. They would order us around to do all their work, to bring them food, to wash their clothes, and do the dishes after every meal. And when some of us refused, we were in for torture. They literally didn't let me sleep at night. They would shove me around all day, make me trip, and would always mess with my stuff. It was all too much to take in. I couldn't focus on my schoolwork because of them. Sometimes they even tore apart or messed up my notes and textbooks. The caretaker turned a blind eye to everything. The situation only got worse day by day. I desperately wished that someone would come and adopt me, but my chances were slim. Most families only adopted infants and babies. I was 15 years old by then, and none of the adopted families even gave me a second glance. One day, I was in the backyard, sulking about everything that was wrong with my life. A little girl came up to me with a ball in her hands. She seemed to be about 5 years old. I was about to ask her who she was when 5 more girls who looked exactly like her walked up to me from the back door. I stood up in shock. What was going on? A lady who was undoubtedly their mother, if the similar feature were to go by, walked out next and gave me a smile. My daughter seemed to really like you. Would you like to become their brother? I was speechless. I was not expecting this all of a sudden. I could have cried out of joy then and there. Okay, fine, I'll admit, I did cry. But how could I not? Finally, I was seeing hope for a better life and a brighter future. Something I had given up on. I didn't waste any time in nodding and giving my consent. After a lot of paperwork and some other processes which happened over the next few days, I was finally in a car, going home with my adoptive family. So, your name is Cameron, right? The lady asked. Actually, wait, should I call her Mom? But she seemed so young. It felt like she was in her early 20s. It would be weird to call her Mom. But then, what else could I call her? Lady? I snorted at my thoughts. Happy, she commented with a smile. Oh, sorry. I immediately rushed. As for your question, yes, I am Cameron. She gave me another smile. It's okay, Cameron. You don't have to be so nervous and careful around me. We're a family now. I'm Jessica. I scratched my head. What should I call you? She let out a laugh. Just call me Jessica. I'm not much older than you. You can consider me as your friend. And I guess you have already met my daughters. I nodded. There are 5 of them, right? Yes, they are quintuplets, Jessica replied fondly. They are only 5 years old, but they are a little troublemakers. I'm warning you in advance. At this point, anything was better than that crappy orphanage life. I certainly didn't mind 5 little girls. What about their dad? I asked hesitantly. Jessica pursed her lips. He's not in the picture. I'm a single mom. Oh, okay, I said in apologetically. Sorry if I asked the wrong question. Jessica patted my back, giving me an assuring smile. You don't have to be so stiff around me, Cameron. As I said, we are a family now. You can ask me anything. It's your right. I instantly relaxed. I was just so grateful for Jessica. It already seemed like my life was going in a better direction now. Jessica got me enrolled in a private school. Soon, I came to realize that I was now living with a super rich family. I mean, they practically lived in a mansion. It seems like Jessica had inherited a lot of money and property from her parents. I had never seen so much comfort in my life. I had a big room of my own and my own walk-in closet. We even went shopping and bought a lot of expensive clothes and shoes. In the beginning, I was a bit hesitant about spending money like this. It still felt like I didn't deserve any of this, and I shouldn't spend Jessica's money unnecessarily. But Jessica had insisted that I could buy anything I wanted. This is all for you, Cameron. she had said, patting my head. I don't want you to hold yourself back
I'll
from
be
anything.
happy.
To be honest, I didn't care about money that much. I mean, yes, it was one part of my now improved lifestyle, but I was overall happy that I had a family now. A family that loved me and cared about my well-being. It felt nice to be an elder brother and let my sisters occupy most of my time. Jessica was not wrong when she said that they were little troublemakers. They would run around the house all day, throwing stuff around and sometimes even breaking some of them. That's why most of the dangerous and expensive items were kept out of their reach. I don't know how it happened, but I took it upon myself to look after them. I practically used to babysit them after getting home from school. I had no idea how Jessica took care of them as a single mom, because, trust me, they were a lot to handle. But still, they were fun, and I loved spending time with them. Cameron, Jessica started one day at the dinner table, you spend all your time with these girls. What about your homework and studies? I complete them before sleeping, I lied. The truth was that I didn't like studying. I know this was a bad thing, but when I was in the orphanage, I used to complain about getting distracted from my studies because of those other kids. And now that I had all the resources, I realized that I was never interested in academics in the first place. I tried a lot to concentrate and to get my head into it, but it was too difficult for me. I was more of a sports person. I liked playing basketball and spending time in extracurricular activities. Academics was not my cup of tea. But of course, I couldn't tell any of this to Jessica. She was doing so much for me. And I guess she also had some expectations from me. So I didn't have the heart to disappoint her. I just used to mug up the important concepts before the day of exam and managed to get passing grades. The first time I showed my report card to Jessica, she seemed to be in shock. I felt really embarrassed. I'm sorry, I said, not being able to meet her eyes. She was definitely disappointed in me. I had taken her kindness for granted. Cameron, she placed a hand on my shoulder, you don't have to be sorry. It's okay, everyone doesn't have to be a topper. I just want you to give your best and not worry about anything else. I'm afraid that much of your time is taken up by the girls and you can't focus on your studies. No, I said immediately. I like spending... The match started. She hugged me and wished me a good luck. Cameron, who is that? Your girlfriend? A girl from my class who was standing beside us suddenly asked. My eyes widened while Jessica just laughed. What was I supposed to say? Mom was not the... I shouldn't be thinking about Jessica like that. I met her eyes to find her already looking at me. I received my fair share of proposals, but I had rejected them because I was not interested. But now that I thought about it clearly, maybe it was because I already liked someone. Someone with whom I was in a very complicated relationship. Yep, I'm talking about Jessica. What even was she to me? Not my mother figure for sure. As I have said earlier, she was like a good friend, and I admired her a lot. She was always there for me whenever I faced any problem, and she always motivated and pushed to do my best. Somewhere along the line, I had fallen for her, and I didn't even realize it. It was only today when that girl asked me the question, I realized that I'd started liking Jessica as someone more than a friend. Jessica, about what the girl said today, I trailed on. Don't worry, we started dating. A few more years passed, and by the time I was 25 and looking for a job, Jessica and I started to plan our wedding. The quintuples were aware of our relationship, and they were okay with it. They were 15 now and in high school. They had become mature, and of course, didn't cause trouble anymore. I had no idea at the time about what was going on in the head of one of them. One night, when I was almost on the verge of falling asleep, the door to my bedroom creaked open, and I sat up in shock. I squinted in the dark to make out who it was. It was Eddie, one of the quintuplets. I switched on the lights and watched her walking towards me with half-closed eyes. Was she sleepwalking? I called her a name a few times, but she didn't answer. Yep, she was definitely sleepwalking. She sat on my bed and muttered something. I shifted closer to listen to what she was saying. I was in for a big shock. I retreated away from her when I made out her words. She was saying that she had a crush on me and didn't want me to marry Jessica. Could it be that she was just mumbling things in her sleep? Whatever it was, I had to resolve this issue. I shook her shoulders, jolting her out of her sleep.
No.
She blinked, staring at me wide-eyed. What happened? She stuttered, looking around. Eddie, is it true that you have a crush on me? I asked her. And that you don't want me to marry your mother? Her cheeks flushed. I do have a crush, but not on you. There's a guy in my class, his name is Cameron too. I kinda like him. It's just that every time I hear your name, it reminds me of him. I exhaled in relief. That's cute. I hope things work out between Cameron and you. And what about the part where you were talking about me not marrying your mother? Eddie looked down at her lap. I don't know. I see you as an older brother. I can't imagine calling you Dad. I mean, you are like a father and everything because you take care of us, but what will happen once you marry Mom? I'm afraid you'll grow distant and become strict. What if... I let out a laugh, cutting off her mid-speech. Eddie, I understand where you're coming from, but trust me, I will remain the same even after marrying your mom. Nothing is going to change. I won't grow distant or become strict. And you don't have to call me Dad, just call me Cameron, like you do now. Understood? She nodded happily and hugged me. Soon after that incident, Jessica and I got married in a private ceremony. Everything went smoothly, and all of us were happy about how things had turned out. A few days after the wedding, though, a new problem arose. The quintuplets, aka the girls who were my official daughters now, needed my help with their studies. Jessica had a job, so she wasn't at home most of the time, and I used to look after the girls. So when they asked me to help with their homework, I couldn't refuse. But one look at that textbook, and I regretted not paying attention in my high school classes. I couldn't understand a simple thing, and I had so many doubts. Why is math so hard? Can you turn to me every day? I want to score good grades, one of them asked. Me too, I need help with physics, another one said. The teacher at my school doesn't even make sense. The others also wanted me to tutor them. In short, I was doomed. You can just hire a tutor for them, Jessica said next morning. No need to beat yourself up over it. No, I quickly denied. I'd be so embarrassed if I was in your place. You're as old as me and you're still a student here? These were some of the common things that the teachers used to say to me. And don't even get me started on the students. They had given me the nickname Grandpa and then ostracized me. I mean, I was not exactly dying to hang out with a bunch of 15-year-olds. But could they at least pretend to be nice? But whatever. I was here to get my concepts straight, not to bother with these useless comments. But one person in particular was making this too hard for me. A teacher, to be exact. Well, she was a weird one. Despite knowing that I was married, she tried to hit on me. First of all, I was her student, and she was doing the wrong thing. And secondly, I was married. When I rejected her, she became bitter about it. She started calling me out in class to answer questions from the chapters that she hadn't even taught beforehand. Of course, this was all to humiliate me. Shame on you, Cameron, she would say in front of the whole class. You can't answer such simple questions. How old are you again? These 15-year-olds can perform better than you. This went on every day. I ignored her in the beginning, but she started employing childish tricks. She started using the other students to humiliate me. Someone superglued me to my chair once, and I guess you can imagine what happened after. I became a laughingstock that day, and that darn teacher was smirking, giving me a knowing look. I knew without a doubt that was her doing. Her dirty tricks didn't stop there. I used to find disgusting notes written on my locker every day, and one day she brought up the quintuplets while humiliating me in the classroom. I bet your daughters are just like you, Cameron, she said. They probably flunk all their subjects. She went on saying things about them while everyone laughed. I had had enough now. I decided to teach this arrogant teacher a lesson. Of course, I was not going to stoop to her level and use disgusting and childish tricks to do that. I had a better way of humiliating her. I did some hard work for a few weeks and studied ahead of the class, understanding all the concepts on my own. Then, I did some advanced research on the topics too. Now, when I attended the classes, I used to cross-question her with complex questions during the lessons. Of course, she wasn't able to answer even a single question of mine. No one cared for the first few days, but when this repeated in every class, and she started making excuses, everyone noticed. They started doubting her knowledge and skills. I heard that someone had even complained to the principal about how lacking she was as a teacher. Well, my job was done. She stopped bothering me. She now knew the price of messing with me. Meanwhile, I helped the quintuplets with their studies. Every day, and eventually they started getting a grasp of the concepts. I was the proudest person when they scored good grades in their tests. I graduated high school for a second time a few years later, and this time, I had graduated with the highest marks in my classes. It was the most satisfactory thing for me. I'm glad that I didn't let society's norms and thoughts bother me, and did what I wanted to do. So this was the story of how I became a stepdad, brother, tutor, as well as a high school student at age 25. What do you think of...
With Dropbox, your content, tools, and team members are always just a click away. You can access...
Fuck off.
Hey guys, it's me, Cameron. A while ago, I shared my story with you, all where I told you about how I married Jessica, the woman who had adopted me. If you remember, Jessica had quintuplets, who were now technically my daughters too. Well, my story had ended up on a happy note then, but something unfortunate had happened with me later, and I couldn't tell it then. But I'm finally ready to share it with you all. Before I tell you what happened, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to show your support to me. So, let's jump into my story now. So, a few years passed, and the quintuplets were now in college. Jessica was busy with her job as always, and I was tutoring high school students now, since I had gained a lot of experience after tutoring my daughters. Anyway, everything was going smoothly for us, and we were a happy family. Until my past started chasing me again. I'm talking about the high school teacher who had humiliated me when I went to high school again, and also tried to hit on me. Her name was Jenny, and as I told you in my last video, I had gotten rid of her by outsmarting her, but I had no idea that she was holding a grudge against me all this time. She was literally plotting all these years to get back at me for what had happened back then. At first, I had no idea about anything, but my story. I'm sorry to keep you waiting, but I needed to be calm and collected and sort out my thoughts before I could share my story again. I'm thankful for all the support I've received. Please, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue showing your support to me. Anyway, so if you remember from the last video, after Jenny framed me for cheating, my wife and daughters kicked me out of the house. I had nowhere to go and was sitting in a park when Jenny approached me. She asked me to go with her. I was contemplating on what to do. Since I had nothing to lose now, I decided to go to her house and plan my next course of action from there. One thing was obvious, that despite everything, Jenny still had feelings for me.
Let's have another join.
She had ruined my life on purpose so that I would have no other choice but to move in with her. But I couldn't even stand the sight of her. She made me feel sick and gross. It had been a few days since I started living with her, and I was already going crazy. She always tried to flirt with me and get me to go out with her, but that would happen only over my dead body. The upside was that she was a professor, so she used to leave for college early and come back late. This gave me the much-needed time and space. After I'd cleared my mind, I decided to do something about the whole situation. First problem was Jenny, of course. She was the person who had ruined everything. I had to collect proof against her and establish my innocence in front of my family. It was going to be quite tricky, though. I needed her to confess everything from her own mouth so that I could record it. But how? One day when she left for college, I decided to search her room for anything that could help me. I found nothing, except for one crucial clue. There was a file of all her educational certificates. From what I could see, she was clearly not qualified to be a professor at a college. I always had my doubts. She was dumb enough as a high school teacher, so how could she have become a professor? This only meant one thing. Someone was obviously backing her.
I guess let's head to my room. Head to bed. Wake up in the morning. and head out, I guess. Let's chill on the balcony on my crib, I guess. On my dorm. Tomorrow, let's chill on the balcony out here. Let's head to bed. Wake up in the fucking morning. Okay, it's 7 AM, just like normal. Another day in the facility. Let's press play.
I couldn't find anything else in her room, though. I took some pictures of her certificates and left her room. After that, I entered the study room.
Huh.
It was where she used to keep her spare laptop. I doubted I would find anything there, but it was still for me. If he ever got promoted, I'd be sure to get good treatment and promotions as he went higher. That's basically been my last 7 years. I've been working hard with Tim.
Let's have another join.
Getting more respect. I've gone from the nervous kid to a confident go-to guy. It's been really great. Other than Tim, I don't socialize with many people from work. I like to keep work and professional life separate. I've never dated anyone from the office. Although, I have noticed a few of the girls looking at me. I think the fact that I don't want to date anyone means that they want what they can't have. One of the girls once told me that some of the women at work talk about me and have bets on who could be the first one to get a date with me. Apparently, a lot of them were involved. Even some senior members of...
Let's head to bed, I guess. Just another day at this mental camp facility. It's 7 AM. Let's head to the cafeteria. I'm hungry. Here we are at the cafeteria. Hey, how can I help you today? Yeah, hey, do you guys have pizza here at this mental camp facility? Sure, what you want? What type of pizza you want? Just a garlic and cheese pizza will do. Cool, that'll be $50. Fuck. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. Cool, I'll bring it to you once it's ready, sir. Cool. Let's chill. Chill by myself. Push play.
staff. Mostly, I tried to ignore all this. I thought it was quite silly and childish. I just wanted to get on with my job and do the best I could. I was completely focused. One time with her, assuming it was about the job. She took me into a small office and sat me down. Before I could say anything, she proudly told me that she was the person in charge of choosing Tim's replacement. Tim couldn't do it yet because he wasn't in charge. Matt couldn't do it because he was leaving and didn't have an interest. As a personnel manager, it fell to Lucy to do it. I was sat at the table in the office, but she didn't sit down. Instead, she stood and leaned over the table towards me. It was kind of weird and intimidating. I didn't know where to look, so I just stared her in her eyes. Then it got really weird. She told me that she liked my eyes, that they were blue like the sea. She then put her hand on my shoulder. I shrugged it off and asked if there was anything she wanted to ask or say about the job.
I would put my
Straight
dick
up,
right down then.
She told me that if I wanted the job, I had to go on a date with her. My eyes almost popped out of my head.
Sex it.
How could she have asked that? I asked her to
Here
repeat
you go,
herself,
sir.
and she said it
Thanks.
again.
Guess
I
what?
was
Eat the bit.
used to the routine of it, but I was caught off guard with...
The food at the cafeteria is yum. Oh, pizza. Let's head to the bloody oval cunt. There we are. Let's chill around. Let's chill. Chill. Where should I chill? Chill here in the courtyard. Here we are. Plush Prycon.
The bartender placed a drink in front of me. I looked up at it. Excuse me? I didn't order this, I told him. And he glanced at me while he was wiping some glasses before gesturing his head towards the other side of the bar. Yeah, she did for you. I sat up and tried to see who he was talking about. Is someone actually hitting on me? It's been a while. I've been too busy at my old job that my main goal at the time was just surviving day to day, completely looking away from distractions. I saw a girl in a white button-up shirt, wearing a black pencil skirt to match it. She smiled at me and gave me a wink, but she didn't move an inch from where she sat. She was beautiful and elegant, with the way she brought her drink to her lips to take a sip. To say that I was enthralled was an understatement, and I couldn't help but look away to avoid being accused of staring. I doubted that she was at the bar for me, and probably just mistook me for someone else, so I let her be. No way someone as attractive as her go for an average-looking guy like me. So I didn't move from my seat either. But I didn't want to be called rude or ungrateful, so I still drank the liquor the bartender placed in front of me. After a while, he gave me another drink that I didn't order. Excuse me, that lady might have the wrong guy, I told the bartender, who just shrugged at me and told me to talk to her myself, and that he had other customers to entertain. I sat up and glanced at the lady again, but she had her eyes on her phone, a different drink in her hand. I took a deep breath. As much as I appreciated the free drinks, I'd just feel guilty if they weren't really meant for me. Getting up to my feet, I headed over to where she sat, bringing along the second free drink she sent me that night. She didn't notice my presence, too busy and caught up in whatever she was reading on her phone that I had to gently tap her shoulder. Excuse me? You might be sending drinks to the wrong guy, I started off, my voice just loud enough so she could hear me through the music. She looked up at me, then at the drink in my hand, then back at me again, and smiled. Pretty sure that's for you. Why don't you join me? She patted the empty seat right next to her. I was surprised at first, but I also felt flattered. I took her offer and I ended up spending the rest of the night with her. I learned the basic things. Her name was Amelia, and she's 5 years older than me. Stuff like that. She didn't tell me what she did for a living, though, but what she said was pretty vague. Amelia told me that I just caught her eye when I left my friend group to drink alone, and thought that I could use some company. She was right about that, and that if I hadn't gone over to her to ask about the free drinks, I would have most likely spent the night alone, until my friends asked me to drive them. I thought our connection that night would lead to something more. But, of course, my friends ended up ruining it for me. They told me one of them passed out on the dance floor and one of them in the bathroom. They asked me if we could already go home, and I had no choice but to say yes, because I didn't want them taking a taxi either. Not when they're also drunk and not in the right state of mind. I apologized to Amelia for ending our conversation so suddenly, to which she gracefully replied with a smile and told me that she understood. I was supposed to get her number, but I ended up forgetting to do so, because my friends asked for my assistance to carry the passed out drunks into my car. I want to say that...
Let's pause it. Teleport. Oh. Come on. Seven in the morning. Another day at the mental camp facility for magical beings and mythical beings. We're attend to the Oval. Come on, I can make it. No, YOLO. There we are. Let's chill here. Press play.
Night was a disaster, but I didn't want to discredit the time